Hey there, welcome to the Inside Cafe. I'm your host, Nikan. And gosh, today, I have with me Dicken Bettinger. So I'm going to read you his bio and then I'm going to give this to Dicken Bettinger. So today I'm honored to have Dr. Dicken Bettinger with us. Dicken is a former clinical psychologist who has spent his career focused on psychological well-being. Since discovering the three principles in 1986, he has dedicated his life to sharing this profound understanding through mentoring, retreats, and his book, Coming Home, Uncovering the Foundations of Psychological Well-Being. Dicken, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Nikon. It's wonderful to be here with you. And this is my favorite topic to talk about. So,
We were just talking about that, about how one thing I've always admired and respected about you is in every conversation that you share about this understanding, you are filled with spirit, enthused, and there's a
mhm.
feeling of enthusiasm where you can't help but feel like it's Christmas. Even talking to you right now, I feel like it's Christmas.
Well, I feel like I won the jackpot in life when I met Sid Banks, who was my teacher, who had an enlightenment experience, and then he shared with me his enthusiasm for what he had found. And he not only did that, but he said, what I've discovered is what's true for every human being. And anyone, anywhere who has insights into this will begin to live at a higher level of well being. And it's been over 35 years, 36 years that I've been exploring this understanding with people, starting with myself, then my family, then my clients, uh, and so I've taught thousands and thousands of clients all over the world, and watched in awe and wonder to see the power that an insight into what's fundamentally true can shift the quality of a person's life. So no wonder I'm enthused as I get to witness people jumping a level of consciousness and then being so grateful for what they've heard.
I, the way you describe it, it's such a beautiful feeling to know that everybody can do that. Everybody can make that.
Anybody, anybody. And I'm it's impossible to judge who's ready to hear something because every human being is built to have insight. So you never know with anybody
Mm,
when someone is going to hear something about what's true and it'll resonate in them and they'll go, oh my gosh, that's so helpful to understand how we as human beings work.
What what do you make of what you just said, that when people resonate with truth, that seems to activate that
Yeah, it,
shift just
it
naturally, like it's almost like a resonance. What do you make of that? I've always been curious about
what comes to
that.
mind. My seventh grade earth science teacher,
Yeah.
and he put his hand up in the form of a
Mm,
ball like the earth, and he said, the earth is a ball,
mm,
and people live on the top and on the side and on the bottom of this ball. And the amazing thing is, people on the anywhere on the ball don't fall off.
mm,
And the other amazing thing is that the people who are on the bottom of the ball don't feel like they're standing on the ceiling,
right.
right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And he said it took a long time before someone, through insight, discovered gravity.
Yeah.
And then gravity could explain why we didn't fall off this ball.
Mm,
And when he explained it that way. It's the first time I had a glimpse of the truth of gravity and what it is and how it works, an invisible force that can hold objects together. And it was like, wow. And it stayed with me all these years. He was a great teacher because he used metaphor and visualization to accentuate his teaching points. And metaphors and stories can get in under our intellect where it's possible to have a completely new and fresh thought and insight and inspiration. And it's a mystery. It's a mystery. When I studied learning theory in college, they'd say learning isn't a straight line. You go along at a level of understanding. Well, I understand this much, and you keep learning, and all of a sudden there's a sudden jump in the understanding that a person has. Like when I was being taught fractions as a child in school.
Mm.
Suddenly I had an insight that helped me understand it better than my other classmates. And anything else in math I struggled with and had trouble with, but I had an insight about fractions. And pretty soon I'm teaching my classmates what fractions were. In learning theory, they call it a discrete moment of learning. At one moment, you don't understand something, and the next moment you do.
Mm.
And they say, we can't explain it, but we know that at that point, something new and fresh breaks through into human consciousness.
Mm.
And it allows us a new way of seeing things that's more helpful or more accurate or more scientific. So it's a sight from within, a sight from within, meaning beyond the intellect.
I've never thought of it that way. And it's true. I've I've looked back on in my own learning. I think before the principles, I even use the word attack things with information gathering. And the premise was if I just got enough information about this, I should be better at it. And since learning the principles, I seek
Mm,
understanding and I seek insight better. And I I still get jazzed about that to know that because I know how it works now, I can look for understanding
yeah.
rather than trying to just cram as much information about it as I can. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, all through school, the primary mode of learning that's taught and expected is information learning.
Mm.
And so we've been taught to listen for information, try to remember it, hold on to it, and be able to repeat it at a future date. And the students that could do that the best got the highest grades. Insight learning is a different kind of learning because it's not based on already known information.
Mm.
It's based on something completely new and fresh arising in our minds that's not coming from stored information.
Mm.
So that already is pointing us toward a deeper intelligence that we're connected to,
That's
that I
wonderful.
like to call wisdom.
Wisdom.
And every culture I know has talked about wisdom and differentiated wisdom from the intellect.
Mm.
It's because you can have a high IQ and not have a whole lot of common sense. And you can have it doesn't matter what your IQ is, everyone is capable of accessing a deeper intelligence that can help guide them through life and thrive and be effective in life,
Beautiful.
enjoy life, love people. It's built into us because we're connected to this formless intelligence.
I love that.
I'm really excited about that. Uh, There's two things I want to teach every one of my clients. It was Sid Banks had two major insights, and the insights they've had about those two things have helped me the most in my life. So when my daughter was 14 and beginning to have insights about these principles, I told her, I said, I only want you to know two things before you leave home. And she started catching on to those two things. And I said, if you learn these two things, you're going to do well in life no matter what challenges come your way. She's 50 years old now and has proven the truth of that because she's had a lot of challenges in her life. And she's incredibly resilient and high-minded and enjoys the heck out of life and is very creative and compassionate and a big contributor to society. And I've seen that. Then I said, I want all my clients to learn these two things. And I said, I want everybody in the world. Right now, I'm involved in global projects now. I want everybody in the world to learn these two things. So the first thing is the realization that we're connected to a creative power that I'll call the power of thought because it's capable of generating continual mental activity in our minds. It's incredible power. If we weren't connected to that power, we'd be dead. We wouldn't be alive. Without thought, we wouldn't have any experience. Without mental activity, we wouldn't have any mental experience, any psychological experience. And the power of thought is constantly generating mental activity. So if it creates a sad thought, it'll immediately bring it to life as the feeling of sadness. If it creates a loving thought, it'll bring it to life as a feeling of love. So whatever thought is created in our heads, we're going to experience. That's a gift that we're given at birth that allows us to experience life. Now, it can explain all the exceptions because if most people haven't been taught that it's the power of thought that's creating what they're feeling. So I've asked people all over the world, what are you feeling? And I get a full range of feelings, as I expected. Every day I have a full range of feelings. We're meant to experience or we wouldn't be alive. So that's cool. But then I'd say, no matter what they say they're feeling, I say, where do you think that feeling is coming from? And I would say on average, 99.9% of people point towards something in the outside world as the source of their experience. And Sydney Banks had this insightful realization that every single bit of what he was feeling was being created in the moment by whatever thought was being created in his head by the power of thought. So I was a psychologist for 10 years before I came across Sydney Banks. 10 years, and no one had ever said every single human experience is created by the power of thought. No one. I had never heard anybody say 100%. They'll say, well, you're feeling down, depressed, anxious. It has to do with your upbringing, has to do with your past. We're going to have to explore your past. Has to do with your personality, has to do with your biochemistry. It has to do with social influences. It has to do with your cultural upbringing, and on and on and on and on and on. There were 450 different theoretical interventions in psychology when I met Sid Banks, because there were no principles. There were no universally identified principles that can explain every single human experience. And Sid Banks says, I had a enlightenment experience and I realized directly what the underlying principles for psychology are. He had a ninth grade education. So that shows you the power of insight. So he thought right away, any human being can be taught about the power of thought. And because it's true that whatever activity is happening in our brain at any moment that's created is showing up as our experience. So as our thinking changes, our feelings change. Now, psychology has believed for hundreds of years that adversity causes stress. Well, there have been hundreds of studies that have shown adversity doesn't cause stress. Because if you take 100 people and put them in the most stressful situation you can think of, the strange thing is every human being has a different experience. And I've witnessed this. In a tragic circumstance, one person is crying, one person is angry, one person is confused and anxious, another person is calm, another person is very loving and compassionate, and they've experienced the exact same external event. But everybody has a different experience depending on what they think. So that's one thing. I mean, we can go into these in as much detail as you want, Nikan, but that's one thing I want every human being on this planet to be taught and learn about and have insight about, because the benefits of learning that are tremendous. You stop feeling like the world makes you feel bad, and so you stop living in a victim mentality. You're a victim of whatever happens to you. And it also creates an outside in view where you think happiness is going to come from outside of you. So people look to the outside to become happy. So they often turn to money, food, sex, alcohol, drugs, something that they think will make them happy because there's this lack of understanding. So, and with understanding, people stop blaming the world for making them feel what they feel, and they begin to realize whatever thoughts I have, I feel. And now I have a greater sense of free will, as if I don't like what I'm feeling, I can stop thinking about what I'm thinking about, or I can let it go, or I can at very least just understand that it's coming from me and not from the world, so I don't feel so helpless. I know it's going to change as soon as my thinking changes, and it's always past. So that's one thing. Boy, when my daughter learned that, she changed so dramatically in front of her eyes that every one of our friends came up and said, "My God, what happened to your daughter? What happened to her?" She went from being 14 years old and very emotional and dramatic to being like a poised, confident 30-year-old woman. Overnight. It blew my wife away so much. She goes, "What are these principles?" What did she learn? It's like what we're all looking for. And when she would get upset, she'd say, "Dad, I tried to stay upset, but I couldn't." And the longest I've been able to stay upset is 10 minutes. Can you imagine a teenager saying the longest I can stay upset is 10 minutes? she became my teacher. I did. She'd come home from school and I'd say, okay, what are you seeing about thought today? And she'd always have great stories. That's the first thing. Shall I keep going or should we?
Sure, I'm just loving the feeling of seeing deeper what you're sharing.
Yeah.
And each story I so resonated in them because I was like, oh yeah, that was me. Like I used to look to the outside to explain why I'm feeling a certain way, or
Yes.
used to try to do things just to make myself happy. And there is one thing I'd love to talk about. And this
Yes. Sure.
you had one of the most wonderful interviews with Michael Emas. And it was a 3 hour podcast interview. I watched the whole thing. I showed it to everybody. But there's one thing you said in it about the past and painful memories. And I'm going to
Yes.
read what you said just to bring it back to life. And then I'd love to talk more about that. This is what you said on painful memories. Those memories are not the past. There is no past. We don't have a past. Memories are simply thoughts we've carried with us through time, and it's natural for them to be triggered sometimes. When they are, they create a feeling. But if you see it as just a thought, it loses its grip on you. It doesn't frighten you. You don't hold on to it as true. And in the moment, you're free, free of the memory, free from the pain. That's how people naturally move through trauma, pain, and suffering by seeing that it's just thought being created in the moment. You don't have to hold on to it. And the reason would love for you to share more about that because I know and seeing from firsthand experience, it's something that a lot of people have a challenge about holding on to painful memories or even
Yeah.
holding on to happy memories because that's the only thing that keeps them happy or that keeps them safe. A lot of people identify with their past. I can't let go of the past. This is who I am. This is where I've been. And I know it keeps them stuck. And I'd love for you to share more about that. How do we let go of the past?
People do every day. Even the people who say it's really hard for me to let go of it, they do every day, all the time.
Hmm.
We all have memories, and when they're activated, they can create strong emotions. At a certain point in our development, if you started to learn that a certain sound in the jungle meant that there was a wild animal of prey, you want to remember that. And you would want the snap of a twig to immediately shoot adrenaline into your body so you'd be ready to fight or flight. So memory serves a purpose. Plus, the capacity for memory allows me to think back on what I did with my grandchildren a week ago and be thrilled and excited by those memories. So there are some memories that are very, very uplifting, and there are some memories now that are very, very painful. So everybody has memories, and they become activated throughout the day naturally at times. And very often, people can be feeling really upset, and their best friend comes to the door, and they immediately look up and go, "Oh, hi. Wow, I didn't know you were coming."
Hmm.
Every night when people fall asleep, they let go of their memories. Or you wouldn't fall asleep. You'd be still thinking about stuff. So it's not a question of how to.
Hmm.
If someone puts their hand on a hot stove, they've never asked me, how do I take my hand off? But you have to learn that when you touch something hot, it's going to hurt. And as soon as you learn that, when there's something hot, you, by memory, know not to touch it. I can remember the first time my little grandson, when he was 2 years old, was running around. We said, don't get near the fireplace. There's a glass door over the fireplace and it gets very hot. We said, don't, it's very hot. Don't touch it. And he tripped and fell and he put his hand against the glass door and it blistered. Never again did he run and play in front of the glass door of the fireplace. That's memory. So memory serves a useful function. But if we're walking down the street and a memory gets activated and we go into fight or flight mode and nothing is happening, nobody's attacking us, there are no tigers. And if we don't understand that that's normal, we'll think there might be something wrong with us. I've seen people go into therapy for that reason. As if, oh my God, there must be something wrong with you. And he's, oh yeah, there must be something in your past. And now we're going to have to dig into your past to figure out what it was that makes you so frightened. So if people understand that if I put my hand on a hot stove, they've never once asked for a technique, they'll take their hand off. If people really see that the only thing making me suffer psychologically right now is I'm holding thoughts. If they really see it, they'll let go, not by technique. Like let go. There's this deeper intelligence of wisdom. That's really the second point I haven't gotten to, that we're connected to a deeper intelligence, a universal intelligence, that when our minds are open, it brings us what we need in the moment. It brings us feelings that uplift, and it brings us new and fresh thinking that's helpful to navigate whatever is happening in the moment. Right? So we hold on to a thought, and as soon as we realize it, if we really realize it, we let it go. For example, I get a phone call from a state agency saying, we have a child here. His father has been arrested for physical abuse. He was beating this kid up terribly every day. And the kid has been going to school and he's in a rage all the time. And he's already slammed a kid against the wall and gave him a concussion. The worst of it is, and he can punch people. He's bigger than kids his age. So he really has hurt kids. And the worst part of it is he bites kids until they bleed. And we have had to assign a teacher full time to stand next to him, and we think we have to put him in a home for emotionally disturbed kids, but we wanted to get your professional opinion before we did that. Can you work with him? I said, I'll be glad to. I'll be glad to. I can guarantee he didn't understand where his feelings came from. I guarantee it because of how he's acting. I can guarantee you he hasn't learned that he's connected to well-being and that it can't be damaged by anything that his father did to him. So he comes into my office, Nikon. The door was closed. He threw the door open, ran to my desk, pulled the drawer out, started throwing everything out onto the room, and knocked over an antique lamp that my father-in-law made, and it broke. Right away, I knew he was in memory because he's angry and he's acting out his anger because he thinks the world has damaged him and made him feel this way. So the response to helplessness is often withdrawal or aggression, fight or flight. So I immediately distracted him and said, hey, come here. And I have it in my office still, is a fossilized vertebrae of a shark, prehistoric shark. It's 50 million years old, given to me by a marine biologist. And I said to him, "Do you know what this is?" And as soon as he got present and he let go of all that memory, all that angry thinking, and he became immediately calmed down and curious. And we talked about sharks and vertebrae and how he has them in his back and I have them in my back. And oh my gosh, we had the best talk about this. And before you know it, he's sitting on the ground, completely calm, completely friendly, very kind-hearted, acting as you would expect a completely healthy child to act, because at that moment he was completely healthy. He just had a misunderstanding. So I couldn't just say to this little boy, "You know your anger? It's just thought."
Mm.
See, that would have been intellectual. So I just played with this little boy for the whole first session. And I was the first adult that didn't treat him like damaged goods. And I treated him with loving kindness and total presence. And he, as humans tend to, responded to that by becoming more present and then more in touch with his well-being. And then it just came out of him naturally.
Mm.
And I found out he loves hot dogs. We got talking. I asked him what he liked to do, what he liked to eat, what I asked him all kinds of questions to just get to know him better and find out what he liked. Because when people are doing what they like, their mind is quiet and present and they access well-being. So it was evident to me he wasn't broken. He has everything he needs. He just has a misunderstanding about the nature of thought. So here's what happened, Nikon.
Mm.
And it shows you everything we've been talking about: the power of insight, pointing people toward what's true for everybody, helps people, anybody, and how an insight can change a person very quickly. I said to him one day, I think it was our second or third session, I said, "Hey, Billy," I'm making up his name. "Hey, Billy, if we were on a picnic eating hot dogs, you and I really having a good time." And he goes, "Yeah, we'd be having a good time." I said, "If I was stupid enough to reach into the fire with some tongs, take out a hot coal and throw it at you, what would you do with it?" And he goes, "Yeah." Right away, he'd throw it away. And I said, "Have you ever played a game called hot potato with your friends?" He goes, "What's that?" I said, "You get in a circle, you have a ball, you throw it around. It's like a really hot potato. And so you don't want to hold on to it, and you keep throwing it, and you set a timer for about a minute. And when the timer goes off, whoever's holding it gets burnt and they're out of the game, and you keep playing until there's only one person left." He says, "I don't know hot potato. We call that game time bomb. It's a bomb. You set a timer, and if you're holding it, when it goes off, you blow up and you're out of the game." I mean, how appropriate for this kid, right? So I said, "Okay, when someone throws you that time bomb, what do you do with it?" And he went, "Oh, right away, I'll throw it to somebody else." I said, "That's a lot like hot thoughts, angry thoughts. Angry thoughts are like hot thoughts. If you hold on to a hot thought, you're going to either get burnt or you're going to blow up." And I watched that kid, just like in the cartoons with the light bulb that goes off. I watched him have an insight that changed his life forever. It's the very first time he realized that his own thinking created his own thoughts, and he didn't have to hold on to a thought if it was a hot thought. 4 days later, I get a call from the principal of the school. And the first thing he says to me is, "What did you do to that kid?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "He hasn't been in a fight all week. He hasn't hurt a single kid. He's been acting like he's just a ordinary kid in the classroom. He hasn't bitten anybody. And we can see him at times. He gets angry, but then right away he gets over it. What did you do to him?" Well, it's a little hard to explain the power of insight. I did my best. I said, "I didn't do anything to that kid. I was explaining to him how thought creates our experience." And he had a really big insight about it and realized that was true. So now it's his own thinking that's creating his upset. He's empowered now. Before, he was a victim of everything that's happened to him in his life.
It, it what occurs to me, the words that occur to me are psychological freedom. That
Yeah,
the boy, what you help the boy have was psychological freedom. And I really love that phrase now because as you were talking, it occurred
yes,
to me, so many of us are trapped by our own thinking and we don't know that we have the key. Like
yeah,
we're
that's right.
fighting and we're rattling against our cage, but the key is in our back pocket.
Yeah,
I'd love for you to speak more to that because as I'm listening to a story about the boy, I can see how psychological freedom is so helpful to everybody in our
yeah,
day-to-day life and in being a kid, in being a parent, and being just trying to have a good life. How it's almost like I laugh because the thing everybody wants is in everybody's back pocket.
no, I
The
know.
key is right there
We,
because they just don't know it. And the funny thing is we're built for it. So I'd love for you to share more about psychological freedom and because I can feel it now.
yeah, it's a feeling.
Yeah.
It's when we're caught. I mean, I'm going to answer this in terms of your question
Sure.
about people with memory in the past. And I want to answer freedom in the context of that if I can.
Absolutely.
Because my heart, I know what it's like to be caught up in painful memories and not know it. And they keep coming up over and again. And I feel less and less empowered because it feels like it's just happening to me and I'm the victim.
Mhm.
So I know what that's like. I know what that's like. I think all of us can relate to that. I've never met a person that didn't have a traumatic experience at some point in their life. It's impossible to go through life without getting unpleasant memories. So everybody has them. But we also have built into us the ability to be aware of the fact that we think. So at some point, that little kid knew me well enough that he was very relaxed in my presence and his personal thinking quieted down. And if we go beyond our intellect, we're free of all the judgments, the painful memories, the shoulds, the have tos. I should do this. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't feel this. I should feel this. I have to. I can't. I can't. All the what's wrong with me? I'm stupid. I should know better. Or I can't believe this has happened to me. And when we step beyond that thinking, many spiritual teachers call that space within us, that pure presence, the freedom space. Because in that moment, we're free of the influence of memory. of the past. We're free. And in that freedom, it's possible to have a whole new thought that's healthier. And that's what happened to this little boy. When he came in to see me the next session, you know, the first thing he said to me, he said, Dicken, would you work with my father?
The boy said that.
The boy said that. He said he doesn't understand where his feelings come from.
Oh,
He's 7 years old. And talk about compassion. This is the man that would beat him up on a daily basis. And now he has compassion for him, saying he's innocent because he hasn't learned where feelings come from. If he knew this, he'd be a great father. And I've worked with lots of people that have been abusive. And when they learn how thought works, when any human being falls out of that personal thinking they're doing and are so caught up in and think is true, when people fall out of that, they touch this freedom space where they're free to have a new thought, free from the influence of their past completely. It's where healing happens. It's where it's the old saying, be ye renewed in spirit, renewed, made new, made fresh again. And everybody already has everything they need because everybody thinks, everybody has this space of pure consciousness within that's just energy. We're beings of energy. Scientists say if you look at a human being, 99.9% of them is energy, formless. So it's heartening to discover that though for yourself through insight. And I've worked with people of all ages and all cultures, and I've never met anybody that's not capable of having an insight. I've never found anybody that's incapable of feeling happy because happiness is our natural state when our head clears. So as soon as a person's head clear of the thoughts that have been burdening them sometimes for years, they're walking around feeling good again. Doesn't mean they won't have low moods, but they're free of all of that painful memory. That's hopeful.
yes, yeah.
That's hopeful. And I've taught people that have spent their adult life in mental institutions. I've taught people that have spent most of their life in prisons, and they're just as capable of accessing this spiritual wisdom that lies beyond our memory, beyond our thinking. So when people quiet down, they touch something deeper within themselves. And everybody's capable of that. Everybody's had insights. We just haven't had insights into how our minds work. That's the missing piece.
You know,
But anybody,
there's a saying I got it in business circles, is that when people don't understand or they don't know the story, they make up their own story.
you
And
know,
in relation to what we're talking about, that oh, that I see that that's why people have a hard time because they're making up their own story of why they feel the way they feel, or um, why they're suffering. And 9 out of 10 times it looks like it's something outside of them. And I can see why this understanding is so helpful because it's a gentle redirection. It's a gentle, deeper understanding of this is how it actually works. And when people understand how it actually works, they don't need to make up stories anymore.
yes, that's beautiful. I like that.
Yeah,
That's a nice way of explaining it.
thank you. And I want to touch on something else too, because the feeling of this conversation, I can feel it. I could only use the word to describe it as love or an impersonal love, where it's just
Yeah.
it's it's pervasive and it's unconditional. And then one of the things I know you talk about in your talks is how pure love is always the answer. And I'd love for you to look in that direction. Because I think
Mm.
that would be so helpful in that next bridge of painful memories and healing and how pure love is always the answer to that. Because I feel like a lot of times people try to their habitual reaction to painful memories is they try to squish it or they try to minimize it or distract themselves from it. And I'd love for you to talk about that because you don't hear a lot of people talking about pure love as the answer to painful memories.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, here's what I've seen to be true, and you can see if it makes sense. I'm not asking anybody to believe me, but if I'm caught up in a lot of thinking, and some people are so busy-minded, they're in their thinking all day long. And in those moments when they fall out of their thinking, those are moments where they enjoy life. So everybody I've talked to, even if they're miserable at work, I say, "What do you enjoy?" "Oh, I love playing golf." "Oh, I love playing golf. When I play golf, I love." "Why do you love playing golf?" "Because of golf." Because they don't know when I fall out of my thinking, I'll fall in love with whatever I'm doing. You can fall in love with washing dishes. Now, what I mean by in love is that when we're caught up in thoughts, concepts create a feeling of difference and separation. So when people are in their heads, they can feel very alone, very separate, very different. I lived that way for a long time because I had a lot of anxious thinking. And I was going like, what's wrong with me? And why am I so different from other people? And I have trouble even talking to people. Uh, well, that was my state of mind. Because when I started learning how my anxiety was just thoughts I was caught up in, and I began to catch myself thinking up anxiety and coming back to the present moment, because when you're fully present, you're not thinking. Thoughts come and go, but you're not thinking them. If you're thinking them, you're not present. It's that simple, right? So I started learning how my feelings that created tension were helpful, friendly reminders that I'm caught up in my thinking and not present. And when I'm present, the worry thoughts, the upset thoughts, the anxious thoughts would fall away and quiet down. And when they did, I would always not only start to feel better, but I would start to feel closer to anything around me. So if I was in my with my wife, caught up in my thinking, I wouldn't she would say, "You're not loving, you're not present, you're not here." My dog, when I'm looking at my phone too long, he starts trying to use his paw to knock my phone away so I can be more present with him, right? So when human beings get present, we're built to start feeling better. As our heads clear, we're built to feel better. I call it being calm, being clear-minded, being open-minded, being present. They're just different words pointing toward when we're not caught up in our thinking. Sid Banks called it the state of no thought. And he said, I don't mean you don't have any thoughts. I mean, you're not paying attention to them because you're present. He said that's the most important thing any human being can learn, that we find freedom and peace and happiness and love only when we're in the state of presence, of no thought. So the state of no thought and this feeling of being more intimately connected to things. So when I fall out of my thinking, I always feel closer to my wife, no matter what state of mind she's in. That's falling in love. When people fall in love, they'll love the other person no matter what mood they're in, right?
Mhm.
They can work out differences easily when they're in that feeling. They can be very forgiving while they're in that feeling, very compassionate while they're in that feeling. They can enjoy life while they're in that feeling. So the feeling of being free of thought is a feeling of being more greatly connected. So if I went for a walk with you in the woods, Nikon, and we were thinking, we wouldn't see beauty.
Mm.
We wouldn't even see the beauty around us. And when I've gone for walks, I do a lot of hiking in the woods and a lot with friends. When we get present, we're just overwhelmed by the beauty everywhere. In other words, we're feeling a closer connection to the trees, to the birds, to the light. And that's true of human beings as the further away we get from our personal thinking, the thinking we do that takes us out of the present moment, the more closely we become connected. Understanding that completely changed my relationship with every person in my life,
Mm.
especially my wife and kids initially, because I started seeing if I was angry and hurt and upset, if I didn't know it was thought, I'd tend to act on it. If I knew it was thought, I knew that when it passed, I would be feeling better, and that when I was feeling better, I always did a better job parenting. And it's the kind of parent I always wanted to be. I just thought it was hard, if not impossible. So all of a sudden I said, wow, I can be an amazing, I had an insight. I can be an amazing parent if I wait until my thinking settles down. And then as soon as I find a nice feeling, go parent my kids, go be with them as, as much as possible. I couldn't always do that, and I became a better and better parent. And they liked that parent better, the one that was peaceful and loving. And pretty soon my kids would come and say, Dad, I got to talk to you about something, but I can see you're upset. Go do what you do. Go take a chill pill and then come back so we can talk about this. Because they started to see the benefits of talking about things when we were in a better state of mind. So when I say love is always the answer, and I learned that from my friend Sydney Banks, it means that if I'm having a problem, rather than trying to think about the problem while I'm upset, because that's the level of thinking that I'll get. Like Einstein says, you can't solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that creates the problem. So I want to first come back to the now, allow that thinking to flow, allow that thinking to pass, and I'm built to feel better. So when I start feeling better, then take a look at the problem, then go be the parent, then go deal with an issue with somebody, then think about the problem.
Gosh, that's a heck of a thing to see. I just realized that in the theme of this conversation of the past, most people try to solve the past in a low feeling, in a low mood.
They
They feel
do.
bad, so they want to do something about it.
Yes,
Right.
yes, absolutely.
That's so I just saw like, oh yeah, people that's so habitual. I feel bad. I need to do something about it. I need to fix the past. I should talk to somebody about my past. And what you're saying is everybody has the ability to take a step back, wait to just simply be in a better feeling before you take a look at it. And what I
Yes,
saw for myself is when I'm in a better feeling, most of the things I was holding on to so tightly, as you would say, it doesn't make so much sense to hold on to it. Like, oh yeah, that's not a good idea. That's not a good use of my attention right now.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I can't tell you, like when I worked in companies, for 16 years, I taught this in really large companies all over the US, actually, all different size companies. One was a multi-billion-dollar company, the third largest defense contracting company in the world.
Mm,
And they loved this training because it helped them recognize that the most important factor in business, the most important variable is the state of mind of the person dealing with the problem.
mm,
And it's the least recognized variable in business. It's the most important and least recognized.
mm,
And as they began to recognize their state of mind and let go of trying to figure out problems while they're caught up in low quality thinking and naturally come back up again into a better state of mind, a better mood, and then take it on. And then, because people at a higher level are more reflective and more creative and more open to new and fresh thinking. In lower states of mind, there is no new and fresh thinking. We're just thinking the same old negative information and memory.
mm,
So it's a little bit like if you're in a department store that has an elevator and you're looking for, let's say you're looking for, I don't know, a new shirt.
you sure? Yeah.
And you go into the department store and you go into the basement and there are no shirts in the basement. There's, I don't know, uh, China, dishware
Mm,
down in the basement. You can look in the basement forever. You're not, the only answers you'll find are dishware answers.
mm,
You won't find the shirt. So you have to get back on the elevator, which is the present moment, and wait until it comes up. And then you get off at a higher level. So the solutions people have at a higher level, it's unbelievable when I work in companies. Often I would be called in because they had what they thought to be insolvable problems. And as soon as I looked at the state of mind of the people when they were trying to solve the problem, I knew exactly why they couldn't solve the problem.
mm,
It wasn't because they were not intelligent, they were super, super intelligent. So, as they learned about the power of thought and their capacity for well being, and they began to understand how to navigate their states of mind so they would be more resilient and come up sooner, get over their upset sooner, their stress. In a calm, quiet state of mind, they could solve problems so easily as a group. They just would brainstorm together and come up with these unbelievable solutions to seemingly impossible problems. And I witnessed that firsthand for many, 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 many years. So as people's state of mind goes up, their job satisfaction go up, their creativity goes up, their problem solving goes up, their communication improves dramatically, their uh, stress level goes way down. I mean, they're more productive. People are more productive in a healthy state of mind. Uh, and that's true of anybody. And so learning about state of mind and what is behind the scenes creating state of mind can help people in any occupation, any profession, begin to do more of their work when they're at their best and less of their work when they're at their worst. They learn that there is an elevator. They learn that the elevator is built to go up, and all they have to do is get on it. And before long, they'll calm down and feel better, and they'll get really good at finding a quiet mind and staying close to it. And then when memory comes up, it's immediately recognized by the feeling. They don't have to examine the content. They just can tell by the feeling there's tension and to let it go. It's just thought coming through. That's natural, not a problem. They stop being frightened of stress, stop judging it. It's just thought trying to wake us up to the present moment.
So insightful. So as you were saying, Dickon, that what I just heard and what you said is how we have so much capacity, resiliency, and ability to solve unsolvable problems if we just know where to look.
Absolutely. And that's true of anybody, any age.
Of any age, right? I love the story about
Yeah,
this
of any
little
age.
boy all the way up to senior executives at major defense companies.
Yeah. Senior executives, I've taught this to 94-year-old people. I've taught it to 4-year-old
Mm,
people because we can recognize, I can go anywhere in the world and say, you think, you're aware, and you have a mind that's capable of more than you think.
mm,
And I have never found anybody that would argue with those three because they're true in of everybody anywhere in the world. And psychology has not had fundamental universal principles before that are always true and true universally. That's why there have been so many different theories. And with a lot of theories, it can get very complicated and confusing. So it's wonderful to begin to learn that we have everything we need. These are ways of talking about the power of this creative, formless energy to create anything in life, but in human beings is to create our experience moment to moment. And when it's what we call the inside out paradigm. Instead of the world makes us experience, our experience is generated from within via thought. So that's the first thing I want everybody to know is whatever you feel is created from thought. Unbelievable how that can help anybody. And then when our minds are quiet, we have access to feelings of well-being and a deeper, more intelligent knowing that can help guide us through any difficult circumstance in life. Just two things for people to learn.
Often with these conversations, the sentence comes up, it can't be that simple, can it? I'm like, it is.
I After I learned this for the first year, that was my mantra. I can't believe it. It can't be this simple. How come we didn't know this before? Well, that's the beauty of insight is discovery.
Mm,
And for hundreds of years, people did not understand that gravity existed, so they couldn't explain. They couldn't explain. It was a huge dilemma to people at one point. They couldn't explain why, if you take any ball and throw it in the air, it'll always come back down. The moon looks like a ball. Why doesn't it fall down to the earth?
that's right.
And all the scientists put their head together and they said, well, the sky is really a dome, and that's not really a ball. It's just painted on the dome. And I go, well, wait a minute, who's painting it? Who changes the painting every night? It's like they said, well, and then one scientist said, I got it. I figured it out. I know the moon is made of celestial matter.
Mm,
And how do you define celestial matter? It's matter that has no weight. So there's no weight to that moon and it doesn't fall. I mean, they came up with all these ideas, and then somebody had an insight, and they went, aha, eureka. There's a force that's pulling things together, and suddenly it could explain so many different things, and it became essential to understand that in aerodynamics, so people could figure out how to make an airplane and fly.
Yeah.
They had to find a shape of the wing that would counter the force of gravity, so it would create lift as you went fast through the air. What shape of wing does that? And then they started putting it together.
I One of the things I'm always amazed when we talk about things like that is if you look at the timeline of insight of between understanding gravity and flying things into space is less than 200 years. And it,
I know.
and the speed of insight is speeding up because we're on a momentum now. We're just
Yeah.
developing at incredible speeds as a species.
I mean, everybody is starting to intuit the importance of state of mind. There was a time in sports when coaches had no understanding of state of mind. And now you hear it all the time in sports about they talk about the importance of getting fully present and being in the zone. They talk about you can't hold on to thoughts about the mistake you just made, or you're going to keep making more and more mistakes. And if you're upset, we may take you out of the game, but it's not to punish you, it's so that you can get your head back in the game. I mean, in business, they're starting to really catch on to this. So it's spreading. This understanding is spreading throughout the world. We're thinkers. And our natural state is freedom,
Mm.
is love, is presence. We're born that way. And we can develop an understanding that allows us to enjoy being in that space of presence. It's good news for all of us. No end to what we can learn. No one can say, I couldn't possibly be more loving, more creative, more insightful. That's we're just tapping into the potential of the human mind, not the brain, the human mind.
Gosh. Well, we're coming up on time. So I want to have a think about if you could give people listening a gift, a knowing or understanding they could take with them to help them through the day, what would you give them?
I would say it as simply as I could. Go and enjoy yourself. And if at any point you're not enjoying yourself, if you can realize that that has something to do with how you're thinking or the thoughts you're caught up in, that'll help you. It'll bring you back to the now. If you really see it, if you really see it's my thinking creating this feeling, it'll bring you right back to the now. And then before you know it, you'll be like a little kid. I watched my little 5-year-old granddaughter. She's happy most of the time because she's present and playing. And then she gets upset, but she doesn't think about anything while she's upset. She comes back to the present moment. Why is that? Because kids know you can only play when you're present. They'd rather play than think about themselves or think about what they're feeling or think about what's wrong or how to fix it. And now we're learning that people who live that way are better equipped to deal with any problem or crisis or difficulty because they're living at a higher level of consciousness. So that'd be my advice. Go and enjoy yourself. And when you're not, if you know it has something to do with thought, it'll bring you back to the now and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, that's some great. That's a great thing to keep in your back pocket. To know it's so close. What I love about that is how simple and available it is to everybody. You don't have to go fix yourself. You don't have to go meditate. You don't have to go do all these things that I used to do to
That's right.
try to feel better.
Me
Just
too.
notice that, oh, I'm a little caught up, and that's it.
That's it. I'm a little caught up. If you really see that, you'll take your hand off your thinking like you take your hand off a hot stove. You won't need reminders. You won't have to put sticky notes up everywhere. You won't have to try and remember. Once you learn it, you got it.
Yeah,
You got it.
that's
If I hold the thought, I suffer. If I let it go, I'll start feeling better naturally. And when I feel better, I do better. It's that simple.
mm,
It's that true for everybody.
excellent. All right. Well, on behalf of everybody listening, is thank you for your work and thank you for your curiosity and willingness to see deeper into this so you can share it with the rest of us. We
No, you're welcome, Nikon. It's been my pleasure. And thanks for your great questions. I appreciate those.
thank you. So, for everybody watching, thank you for listening and have a great life.
Yeah, yeah, we can say that now.
Yeah,
Have a great
have
life.
a great life. All right. Thank you, everybody. All right. Bye.